Hi again, and we've been talking about some of the changes in Howler 10, and we've been going through each menu, just looking at some of the smaller, more subtle changes that have taken place in version 10, and it seems good to continue doing that. Now, really, this is not a version we've done where all the big changes are hidden away in menus. We've intentionally made changes out in the main part of the program where the features that you use every day are the ones that are getting the big enhancements, and that's been a really intentional decision that we made, such as changing the color picker and the media browser and things like that, and particle tools, that sort of thing, because it was just usability's turn. We've done a lot of changes on esoteric features, such as visual effects tools and things like that in past updates, but it just seemed like it was time to really catch up with the meat and potatoes, the things everybody is going to be interested in, the mainstream features. So this is really what 10 has been about. But as I was saying, we're going to go through some more of our more subtle changes in this series. So let's talk briefly about the brush menu. And again, there's not a lot of changes here. It's worth talking about the brush menu in that it somewhat mirrors the image menu. And as I talked about last time, everything in the image menu, or many things in the image menu, will be applied not only to an image but also to an entire animation. And this idea carries through to the brush menu. Many things that you do in the brush menu will not only be applied to a brush image, but also to an animated brush. And to make a few definitions here, when we're talking about the brush menu, we're specifically talking about custom brushes, or our idea of what custom brushes are, and not just specifically any type of media. What we consider a brush in Howler is an image, such as whatever's on screen, that you pick up using the custom brush selector tool and make into a brush. That image is what we consider a brush, and that's the type of thing you manage using the image menu. There are many things you can do, and the power of this is that you're not using canned media or effects or paint brushes. You make your own brushes in Howler, basically. That's kind of really what we're built on. Not just picking a shape or setting like some of these little built-in things. A lot of people complained that these were just really small images, but the idea behind Howler is you don't just pick something and use it. You really build on what you have. These are just tools. These are just starting points. So you might take something like this, and you say, I want a shape like that. Well, just click B on the keyboard. That's the custom brush selector. Pick it up, and that's a brush. There's various things you can do with it, such as changing the mode from full color mode, where it uses all the colors that you just picked up off the screen, and just change it into a matte style where it's one color, that becoming a painting tool. Many other things you can do. I'm not going to go over every last thing, but just to give you the idea, there's color bleed, there's opacity, scaling, rotating, random position, random size, all these kind of things that you can use to make your own media. And like I said, you're not limited to a 35 by 35 brush. You can make a brush as big as the screen if you want to. Just whatever you want, you can pick it up and use it as a brush, just like that. I'll make that, use the matte mode, and that becomes a new tool. And again, we don't really have that idea of opaque channels in Howler. What we have is a brush keyer, and it's a system that's worked really well for us. Basically in Howler you have right and left buttons that one paints and one erases, and by erasing we mean it restores it to the background color, or the primary and secondary colors. And as I was saying, this brush keyer will let you also change the opacity or the transparency of this brush like you see there. And it's very adjustable. So that's one way you can use, or that's really basically what our concept of brushes and custom brushes is in Howler. So I talked about that. Now let me also talk about animated brushes. In other programs, they would have something they might call tubes or hoses or something like that. Howler is a similar idea. In those other programs, they're aligned or they're stored as image arrays, basically a single bitmap with a bunch of different pictures in it, and we can support those as well. But basically, our brushes are meant to be used with animation. So basically, you can pick up part of an animation, and that's another tutorial really, but you can just, if you had an animation, you could hold down the Alt key and pick up a brush when you're using a custom brush selector, and that would pick up the entire animation. And then we also have another thing we call anim painting or animated painting. We hold down the Alt key while you're painting, and it paints with that animated brush. Lots of creative possibilities, a little more involved than what I'm getting into today, so I'm just going to move on. But as you see here, you can just see an animated brush. And that's just basically a brush we picked up, and then we used what we call the brush timeline to make further changes to that, and that is here on the brush menu, and it is here somewhere. Let's see, I know it's here somewhere, I've used it 1,000 times. Here we go, animated brush timeline, and it gives you basically like the animation timeline. It mirrors that, and it lets you make keyframe changes to a brush, lots of things. Again, that's another tutorial. So I'm going to go ahead and just show you a few things that you can do in the brush menu. And that's interesting. Let's see. I'll just make a basic shape. Let's see, with a circle tool. Pick it up and go to brush, transparency, and transparency tool. And I'm using this basically because we've never actually talked about this tool before. In this version 10, it's been integrated. It used to be a plugin. Sometimes you just want to take a shape and give it some edge transparency, and we can do that. Apply it to the brush, and suddenly our edges become transparent. Or say we want it the other way around and we want the center to be transparent. And I'll apply that to the brush, and you can see the center kind of becomes transparent. We also have some smoothing options. Sometimes the shape you make is kind of complex, but so that's something basically you can try out. It's just not something we've really talked about a lot in the past, so feel free to try that out. That's under the brush menu and the transparency section there. Excuse me. Excuse me. And as I was saying, not a lot of changes, but there are a few more changes here. Loading an image sequence into a brush has been updated. There's some additional options. You can load BMP or Targa files directly into an animated brush again. And as I said, image hoses and tubes, we can also support those. There's a feature we call image array to animated brush under the animated brush menu, and that used to be a plugin that's been integrated as well. It basically takes a one of those image arrays and slices it and then creates an animated brush out of it. So not only can you create animated brushes in Howler, but you can import image arrays from other programs and create animated brushes from those as well. So that's the image menu or the brush menu in Howler, and really more than I can talk about in one tutorial. I think Philip's done at least 100 tutorials on brushes, so feel free to browse our PD Howler channel. You can always search the channel for specific things you want to learn about. And thanks for watching. Keep your eye out for Howler 10, which is imminent, and ta-ta for now.